I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure I get my full hearing here in the screen here, get you a little more of that. Welcome to episode 677 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. With that, that's Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. And again, welcome to episode 677 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NEIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. Quite simply, we call it HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is still out on assignment, so we have none other than AD Drew, giving you a show to close the week. For show 677. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live. KCWH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Well, right about now, we need a boat or two, certainly maybe a canoe to get us around the city as it continues to rain throughout the summer. Not quite used to this, but it's hot 1 minute and it's raining the next, humid the other. In Houston, we are used to that. With that being said, let me bring on my other co-host, which is Charles Bishop and AD Drew, and get things started with them as we start to ask them how their day is going. Let me say today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides educational consulting and data analytics. With that being said, let me say to you, Drew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Dr. Cavil and Charles. It's not just raining in Houston, but it's raining here in the metro Atlanta area also. We just had a round of rain just rolled through here. Not as bad as you had on the other night, Charles. And speaking of talking about rain and storms and everything else, I just want to take a point of special privilege and say hello to the executive director of the MEAC SWAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl, John Green. We know he's out there listening somewhere. So I just want to take a point of special privilege to tell him hello.
With that being said, and you're right, it sounds like we're all used to finding ways to deal with the water side of things, and we're not talking about the aqua parks. Charles, how are you doing today? I imagine you fighting through water and rain yourself, huh?
Yeah, fighting through water and rain. But, one of the things today, Doc, doing well, but I've been getting so many texts and calls today. They said there was a provocateur out there who's promoting that Jackson State and Florida A&M is a rivalry. And I don't know who that provocateur is, but I'm going to find out who that provocateur is, because I said, there's no way. There is no way. Somebody's out there really saying that Florida A&M and Jackson State are rivals. That tickled me.
Hey, usually I would say that we need to get some news of the day. We might have to push that.
Let's push it.
One of the show, but I think this is more entertaining for the folks. And I think we need to find out something here. We need to finally have a discussion between folks that are associated with these given institutions. They are multi-alumni, so they have background, what it means in terms of rivalry, in terms of different institutions that they have graduated from in terms of becoming alumni. So it's unique. And we have these two gentlemen. One that certainly is connected and it represents Jackson State. The other one is connected. It represents FAMU as Florida A&M University. So let me start with you, Charles. Since you put this on the table, how are you defining rivalry? And why do you say that Jackson State and FAMU is not a rivalry?
I think a rivalry has to have good give and take. Where you have one team that wins, the other team wins. There's a good balance of wins and losses, and it builds up. It builds up. And there's some anticipation. If you have to tap the other team on the shoulder to let them know that they're a rival, that's not a rivalry.
Let me follow up before I ask Drew his perspective on that, just so we're clear. Are you referencing one sport, or are we talking about multi-sport?
Well, one sport in particular, but I think the overall gist, it's not a rivalry, not yet.
What sport are you referencing since you talk about one sport in particular? What is that particular sport?
That particular sport would be football. I understand. I know the HBCU community sort of has this when FAM shows up, but it just doesn't quite happen with regards to Jackson State. So.
All right. Well, let me turn to the other side of the courtroom, if you would, or debate stage. Go to you, 80 Drew. Let me reframe this question from your perspective. How do you define rivalry?
I think I need to take a pause and give everybody the framework of where this discussion is even coming from. 2 Sundays ago, on the BCSL Sports Lab, we had a discussion about sports rivalry, specifically in football, since football season is coming on. All right. We listed 3 different categories for rivalries when we did it. We took, since the pandemic, which is 2021, which just happens to coincide with when we had all the switches in the conferences with the BAC teams and the SWAC teams. So we discussed rivalries since then, recent rivalries. We discussed rivalries since the turn of the century, since the year 2000, and then we discussed historic rivals. All right. Now, that I got that out the way how we got there, let me give you the definition of an athletic rivalry. An athletic rivalry is a form of intense competition between 2 or more sports teams or athletes, often fueled by factors like geography, proximity, historic matchups, and shared cultural identity. These rivalries can manifest into heated competition, extend beyond the playing field, and impact fans, management, and even the broader cultural landscape. Now, get into what Charles is so upset about.
No, there's no upset.
Wait, okay. Right? Charles, that one eyebrow went up while the other one stayed down. You upset, bro. I've been around you too long. Anyway,
better word is maybe perturbed, not upset, but
perturbed.
Tickle? Yes, tickle. Yes.
Yes, and started to do pure correct. Carlos started it off. We carried it on our show. So, anyway, giving that definition, I made the bold statement and said you would have to consider FAMU Jackson State a recent rivalry since FAMU joined the SWAC. Why do I say that? Because for the first 3 years, the only loss these two had to each other in SWAC competition was to each other until last year. Championships have been decided by that one particular football game. Once again, since 2021, Charles, I'm not talking historical. Given the definition that I just gave, the proximity, the historical matchups, Yeah, we had that one dud, but y'all won't let it go. So it's historical. It's historical. Yeah, we know that, you know, when y'all came down to Miami and whooped our tail. You know, we know that's out there. And Charles, be it not for two boneheaded plays in the fourth quarter last year.
Yeah, there they go.
No,
There they go.
be it not for two boneheaded plays, that is a totally different ball game. That is a totally different ball game, Charles. I'm not saying Jackson State would not have won that game. That is not what I'm saying. But that game was turned around on two plays of a fumble and a pick six on back-to-back possessions.
If was a if, we'd all be drunk.
That game, and what game helped determine the SWAC division championship last year? That game, because that's what started the downslide for Florida A&M. Yeah, we hadn't lost the Valley yet, everybody. Don't forget that. We had not lost the Valley at that point. Jackson State was the first one to put that L on us. So, given those definitions, historical matchup, shared cultural identity. What's the one identity outside of football that we share, Charles? It's our bands. We share that. You know, we share the conference. It's been
do we share bands?
Heated rivalry.
One travel.
And this extends beyond the playing field. If you and I talking about this on this podcast is not extending beyond the playing field, I don't know what it is, Sean.
One of the bands travels. I'm just
see, there we go. Taking shots.
All right, Drew.
And last thing. Broader cultural landscape. If there's one thing that will get a debate, no matter who it is in HBCU culture, there are two things, and y'all on both ends of it. There's Southern Jackson State and FAMU Jackson State. Those two will get a conversation started, whether you're a fan of those two schools or not. That's why I said it's been a rivalry since 2021. I am dropping my mic now.
Yeah, as the professor of record that is reviewing this debate, I think, Charles, you made a very good argument. Drew, the framework how you set up the argument is truly important. But I am interested in the fact that it's very intriguing to me in terms of when you start to argue. Just the last 5 years? Or does it go beyond that when you talk about Charles in what happened before the SWAC? Or do you go all the way back to the legendary time in 1978-79 when they played in the semifinals of the first FCS, at that time, 1AA championship? Well, FAMU went to Jackson and edged out FAMU and ultimately won the championship. Do we take it back?
Keep going back. 61, 62.
Or do you go back? I was going to say to the Orange Blossom years that decided national championship after you had conference champions face off out of the SWAC, Midwestern Conference before that. In those days, SIC at the time for FAMU, multiple. So this splits multiple conferences in different ways. So I will say this. I render my judgment that just because one side does not want it to be a rival, the fact that this goes off in the tangents interrupts the Inside the HBCU Sports Lab to make sure clarity is provided. Since I have posters that shun one side and the other, I declare by any definition of the word, this is certainly a rivalry because y'all just can't get enough talking about it, whether you talking about whether it is or not. Therefore, by any definition, anybody that looks at this stuff, when you have two fan bases that can't stand each other, I don't care what the record is in whatever sports, by that definition, it is a rivalry. It may not be Jackson State's number one rivalry. It may not be FAMU's one rivalry. But I tell you, anybody else outside of you all two that looks at this understands, by definition, this is a rivalry. Case dismissed. The show will continue. We'll take our first break and come back on the other side and flip the script and get into the next side where there is also rivalry. We'll talk about a little band talk to see how much further we can get into these folks' disagreement, particularly when you talk about one band that travels and the other one that doesn't. One band, one sound. Let's take our first break and come back on the other side.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACchallenge.com.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course, lecture,
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna love, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As we get into this, talk a little bit about this band talk. We'll look at bringing Mr. Wesby in. That is James JDub.
JDub.
Told me about the JDub part. Is that new, old? How does that work?
Oh, that started in college, right, Chuck B?
It started in college, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Dub.
It went from James Wesby to James JW to Dubs. So I just said no, just leave it at JDub. But I go home, go to school, and it's still Dubs. What up, Dubs? So
I like it. I got a line brother, for that matter, named Johnny Walker.
Yeah,
we call him JDub, as you'd imagine. Yeah. So I just hadn't had the opportunity to use that backing. I usually use Brother Wesby, but as we have become more as a team and learn each other, I'll start saying JDub. Make sure that I become part of the family. Welcome back to the house.
It's good to be back, man. It's great to see you again. Coach Charles and I, we just saw each other a couple of weeks ago. And Drew, is a pleasure to meet you, my brother, although you're so wrong with the rivalries, but I'm not going to say that.
I think this is going to be the perfect segment for those that
said once again since 2021. Please put the asterisk by this argument for me. I'm tired of y'all folks. Since 2021.
Hey, I've already ruled. They can say what they want. Don't worry about it, Drew. The judge, the professor of record that hands out the grades inside the sports lab
That's right.
his grade. Now you can go ask for audit. You can take this to the department chair. You can take it to the dean. Hell, you can take it to the provost. Right to the president and the board for all I can get. But I know what y'all don't understand. I take copious records. I wish you would challenge the grade that I put on the table. You go to work.
That's right.
Thank you. For those that did not recall, see, Dr. Carey understands this as well in terms of writing them grades in the letter book. He'll tell you, he might not side with my argument, but he know if I keep the records, the grade will stand. With that being said, for those that don't recall, Brother Wesby has been on the show before. He is a former drum major. I don't know if former is the correct way to say that. Once a drum major, always a drum major in terms of the great band. I will say that. Sonic Boom of the South there at Jackson State University, the Jackson State as they like to say around those parts. And he's always provided us with some information on the band for those that are in another vernacular talk about the band heads that often we just are not aware of. So it's always a pleasure to bring you on because this is where you get to educate not just us, but other folks and have a discussion from the band. And so since we're getting ready in this opportunity to talk about in July, the SWAC football media days, I've always said that we should have a SWAC band, a marching band. That's like a lot of folks talk about the marching sport media day. And I've had some folks that have kind of jumped on that. And for the classics you've seen in some areas, State Fair Classic, even in the case recently with the MEAC SWAC Challenge with John Grant, some of those folks have kind of listened to me and talked about the fact that they've brought in the drum majors to really look at what we do for our classics. So this is an opportunity to go down there. G Boom, one of your fellow drum majors of the SWAC historically.
Yeah, I just saw him pop up.
Yeah, so just wanted to give you a little opening banter. So let me start this before I pass it around and get into some further questions. Talk a little bit about summer practice. As you start preparing for what we know as the HBCU marching sport season, marching bands, we often look at summer practice for the football team. We've heard over the period of times that they would bring back part of the team. A lot of folks have now pushed to make sure they can bring more folks into school. How does that work on the marching side? What is your experience preparing band in summer school? What does that look like? Who comes in from your school?
There are phases in summer camp. One, director must make sure that upcoming freshmen transition seamlessly from high school to college world. And that's why you'll see a separation, or I can speak to Jackson State. You'll see a separation in weeks. You'll have the freshmen that come in the first 2 weeks, typically around July or August timeframe, depending upon what do they have going on for like August or September. Then you'll have the upcoming upperclassmen to come. Now, the section leaders will join the freshmen, of course, so they all have to come a little early. But this is the time that everybody gather up to see what do we have, what kind of freshmen do we have coming in, how can they blend to what we have right now, and they get them. They break everything down to the point that they're going over basic things, and they're actually gradually going up these steps to the point that they're saying now you're finally at that chance that you can play amongst us, amongst the veterans. So that takes time. You're talking about calisthenics exercising. You're talking about because that is huge. You're going from high school transition now. All of a sudden, you don't have the wind to be, coming in a stadium and it's nonstop from point A, getting off the bus to leaving and getting back on the bus. You always you got to have that breathing mechanism, and you have to work with it. So it starts with like getting up 5 o'clock in the morning. You're doing some exercise for a good, hour, just like the football team. You eat, then you practice, and you eat again, and you practice and practice and practice. And that's for a good hardcore 2 weeks. And it's all about being together. And then when you morph the upperclassmen, we're looking like a one band, one sound. And even then, when you're morphing against that, it does take another month to even have that feel, that really good sound that the directors are looking for. So that's what you got in the summer camp. It's all about a seamless transition for the freshmen and bringing the upperclassmen so they can actually reconnect with one another and get that full sound that the directors are looking for.
And this is good stuff. I'll ask one more question before I allow them to follow up. We'll probably take a break and ask you to stay over so we can provide 2 segments to really get into some dialogue, and let both Charles and Drew provide you with their question. I want to take it off of the band members. I want to take it to the band director or the composers, maybe more specifically. What is your experience of in terms of when does it start in terms of choreographing for the season? Mm-hmm. I understand that obviously freshmen, there are some band things that are true to whatever prospective bands across of it. Some of it simply is obviously the fight song. And then there's some traditional songs that schools have that have become legendary status. But there's also the newer, more local popular. Who writes those new songs? And when does that process begin from a band directorship or the other folks associated with the band director? Who does that? When does that start? And how do they start to inculcate that into the freshmen? And then as they move into the entire band, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, let's take it, if I can make an analogy as basketball, NBA, you have, for an example, let's take your guy in the Bulls. He had the triangle, what they call the
Tex Winners. They had the triangle offense.
The triangle offense. So, you're not searching for band people to just come and join the band. You're actually looking for people to come in and, adopt to this triangle offense. The director already have in their mind what this band should look like, what it should sound like, and what do I see at the end of the year where the results of me thinking about this. It starts actually, to be honest, I say around winter going into spring, and you have a choice. You have a choice to continue that some bands stop after the football unless they have a few parades. I've seen bands just continuously doing things. For an example, Jackson State had this rock session. So what does that mean? That means that they don't stop. They're still practicing their craft. So when they bring the freshmen in, and I'm looking at this triangle offense, and I need certain trumpets. I may have been lacking in sousaphones or tuba. So what I need to do is think about how am I recruiting now. So I just don't have to recruit for I'm sorry. So I don't have to recruit. I'm sorry. Somebody was coming in. I'm sorry. So I don't have to recruit for trumpets if trumpets were the, my heavy hitters. But I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, who was lacking? I may need the percussion. So I'm recruiting out there for the percussion so they can fit in this whole conglomerate of what I'm looking at. So the directors and the arrangers already starting what the season is going to look like. What are the themes are we going to capitalize on? Not only that, what society is actually going through right now. With all the things that we're going through, that's themes. That's, things that we can capitalize on. There may be R&B singer that just passed away. So they know a show has to get into, recognizing that person. So I'm already thinking of songs I need to write, arrangements I need to go ahead and create. And I need to figure out how can I arrange this and what pieces do I need in the off season to make sure when I'm recruiting and I'm trading and I'm NILing, that I have all these people together to come together and make this one band, one sound.
Man, that's fascinating. Appreciate you sharing that. We'll take our next break. Come back on the other side. I'll share the mic and let Charles and Drew get in here and ask some follow-up questions, because you're going to school today, as I said, and we will have a test, at least a quiz after this as well. Let's take our next break and come back on the other side.
Sure deal.
There's a shot. To right. It might be. It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do, and all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern, Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACchallenge.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
We have Mr. James Wesby. I like and have the privilege to be able to call him Brother Wesby, and now JDub. With that being said, let me let Charles follow up with a question.
Yeah, James, and I want to ask this question in terms of the social media piece of bands and how they go about branding various bands. And we just saw, sort of the next innovation. Garrett Anderson, Human Jukebox Media. They've won an Emmy now, and I'm very curious in terms of that presentation piece when you have the band media, how much that sort of carries the momentum of this of a band being out front of their audience, and how important that aspect of it is going forward.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, Charles. I think that it's time from a if you really think about the amount of views that certain bands receive during a show, or just being live videos. This is, it's huge. And I always say, from a branding standpoint, I think it's time for us to look at avenues for bands to, draw some income from it. I don't know what it may look like, And I'm not the one to determine that, but if you really think about it, we need scholarships as well, and I think that there are certain bands out there that has proven themselves over and over again that they are top tier, that I think they need to probably do a trial and error and see what that looks like as it relates to, social media presence, branding,
monetizing their content.
Yeah, monetizing the content, and it's hard because the thing about it is that who regulates that? I don't know. I mean, I don't understand. But I'm not sitting here because we have several production companies that we need, and I am not. It's a catch-22, and I'm 50-50 with it because these guys have done a great job of providing us with content, videos, so we can see these bands on a day-to-day basis. But you're talking about Florida A&M, who deep in history, historical bands, Southern, Jackson State, Texas Southern, Prairie View, these top Tennessee State, Alabama State, these people, they work hard, man. And I think we just need to capitalize on that as well. When I was in the band, our 5 o'clock drumming just had to be there for, the first person to come in. And from there, we didn't finish till 11 or 12 o'clock, so what happens? Some people didn't get scholarships. I was fortunate to have, but other people who had to do the same thing. What are we doing to help monetizing that based upon the amount of views, millions of views? I don't see anybody on Facebook that have millions of views and don't get paid for it. I don't know. That's just me. So I think that's where we should be going and looking at it in a unique way. But I'm not the person to come in and just try to regulate it. It's just 50-50, just something that we need to think about when it comes to social media and branding.
Mm-hmm.
I think you bring up excellent points. You're going to make me go back into that consulting hat. And I have some ideas that immediately came to mind in terms of how you can monetize it, where you take some framework of current ways that other media components of branding it, but I don't want to put it on the air. We've had folks now kind of sharing the content in such a way. So I'm going to reach out directly to some of the more open band directors of what that looks like. And for that matter, in some partnership with some athletic directors that I work with that can provide some ways that this could potentially be monetized, and at least look at the talking about them considering it. With that being said, let me hold off any longer about that. Pass the mic to Drew. Go ahead with your follow-up question.
Uh-oh.
You muted there.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Got you now.
Okay.
Let it roll.
All right. I'm gonna ask my question from a different framework. And I've always been, well, first of all, back when I was a student, I was, just like everybody else, I wanted to see the show at halftime. Then when I was coaching, I kind of got away from it because with coaching, you're in the locker room while y'all out there doing y'all thing, 0 quarter, halftime. After the game, we just tried to get up out of there. So I kind of missed those years of seeing some of the evolution of the band till I got back out and got into media. And one thing that has always enamored me, both when I was a student, a couple of times I did get to see the band when I was coaching, and even now, it's a show, it's the voice of the band.
Excellent.
And every school has that distinct voice for their band, and the timing and everything that they say that goes along with you guys' show is usually second to none, no matter which voice that we're talking about at which school. How is that put together? Take me behind the scenes. Do y'all write the script for them? Do they see the show? Is they write the script? Is it a collaborative effort? And how is that done? And sometimes is it done on the fly like a comedian does? He may have his punchlines and his jokes, but he reads the audience and then he changes stuff up. Talk to me about that part of it, because I don't think that's something that we talk about a whole lot.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, Doug. We've talked about that.
Yeah. This how it goes. So you have a show that is a collaboration. To your point, it is a collaboration. You'll have a show that has been constructed, and probably between Thursday and Friday, you'll have that announcer to come in and go through the show over and over again, where there's somebody like the head drum major or assistant director that's beside the voice, and that goes through the actual, reading during the parts, that he can just say, okay, this part, take a break here. I need for you to be on point. I need for you to introduce us 3 seconds before that. We had people to sit down with me. It was the infamous, Dr. James. Yeah. And he was the voice of Jackson State. We have a new guy, and they actually, to be honest, y'all don't know that they try out. The guy who actually, he interviewed the guy who's for Jackson State right now, and I remember that process. I wasn't involved in it, but I remember the process that he had to interview and go over scripts and stuff like that. Some people that I give some shout out to only because I've heard them, not to say people that I didn't, but FAMU, their voice of their band is he's the maverick of all of this. Him and Jimmy James, I put him in the same boat. Because when you're introducing the band, these are the things that set us up for success. And it's nothing like somebody saying, ladies and gentlemen, entering the building from the South. It's the sonic boom of the South. It's that voice that gives chills down your spine that says, then all of a sudden, get ready. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's timing. And if you don't have the right person doing it in timing, everything is off. It has to be right there to the point. The sonic boom of the South. Whoa, 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 whoa. It has to move like that. So I remember one show that we had. Unfortunately, Jimmy James was up in age, and it was during the time we had the Tootsie Roll to the left, to the left, to the right. So we have finished the left, and he's to the right, and he's now said to the left, boom. No, we're done with that. To the right, we're done with that move, man. So it also you have to have somebody that's there on Thursday and Friday. You have a head drum major, typically, that's going over the show with them, or assistant director, and they have to be on point from a timing standpoint, when to introduce, when to stop, and sometimes you have to ad-lib. Let's say, for an example, Southern talks about us. That person got to be ready to say something before the show even starts. Southern, get back on your bus because the boom is here. Something that's ad-libbing that you got to be on point, that you can, just relate to it and do it right off the bat. So,
yeah, let me jump in real quick, because I don't think.
Go ahead, Joe.
We've talked about this, James, in terms of, I don't think people understand how important that voice is with regards to the band, because your show could be a great show, but it could fall flat if the right person is not, from a timing perspective, given a great introduction, a nice amount of petty, as we've talked about, there has to be some petty in there. But I mean, that voice, can propel the band, or the show can fall flat. And I think that's, guys like Joe Bullock, thank you, Chuck, at Florida A&M, mentioned Jimmy James. I like Southern's PA guy as well. I don't know his name, but I mean, these guys are masters, I think, at that sweet science of that fine line between introduction of a song, introduction of a group, and a little petty in there as well. So I've always been fascinated about it.
Charles, you make a good point, and I'm sorry I didn't bring that up, but that is the point. You got to have somebody that's like the backbone of the voice. Like I said, it set the stage, and you can't be there with a tremendous show and have somebody timid that is talking about the show. They have to have that rundown to the point that they have to get the fans involved. They got to get them touched. They have to get them emotionally touched of what's going on the field. And if not, like you said, Charles, you can have the best show in the world, but if that announcer is not on point and he's at a point that he is seeing the crowd, and if the crowd not moving, he has to get, or she, they have to get that thing up and revved up so we can have a, execute our show at a high level. And that goes from, having that voice that's behind us, helping us through this show. So Darren, that's right. Darren's the guy out in Southern. He's also a Maverick as well, man. But these are masters of voices. And it's so funny that it's not funny. It's amazing that the voice of FAMU, the guy has been there forever and ever. He just know what to say at what time.
Joe Bullock. He's just great. I was in school in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's a master. He's a master.
Yeah, he's a master of voice. I think he ought to have a training of how to voice with the band.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. So in other words, the voice, it may not make the show, but it can break the show.
Oh, yes, sir. No doubt.
Man, great information, great questions. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing that. We'll take a little personal privilege before we go to this next break. I want to say this opportunity, obviously people know by now I'm a member of a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. You all know Charles is a member of the same fraternity, as well as James, and they happen to be part of the Delta Phi chapter. A couple of weeks ago, they had their reunion. And while we all have our brotherhood, folks that are in fraternities know how special, one, your line is, obviously, and those that usually preceded you, and those that came behind you, and sometimes it extends from that. And in that era that you were part of your organization at the institution, there's a lot of memories about that, and it's a very special bond. And when we go to state, regional, nationals, and this is for any organization, obviously provinces when you use it in terms of other components, and I imagine the same way with sororities. That kinship as you cross during the years, you get into the workforce is extremely special. But there's something about the bond that is within a chapter. And when a chapter has the freedom and allows other folks to mix, or at least a person to mix within that chapter, is extremely special and a different opportunity when you do that. And I had this opportunity recently with Delta Phi. So I wanted to come up on air and say thank you for those brothers that treated me as if I was part of the chapter, not just part of the fraternity. And I'll take this also with Delta Gamma over there at Alabama A&M with some of the brothers that we've collectively over the years created our own page, our own persona that extends in a lot of ways throughout the SWAC. And so I have something I'm doing to recognize that in terms of a jacket I want to put out there. But it was really special for me able to spend some time in the evening with you all to welcome me into not just the brotherhood, but the chapter. So I want to say thank you to you all too, and the rest of the brothers that were so open that evening in terms of giving me a chance to kind of spend that special moment with y'all. So thank you for that.
No problem, my friend. You're always welcome, man. And to your point, I'll be very brief. The retreat was created in order to handle the conditions that we're in as men, health, finance, whatever the case may be. So if you're in a fraternity, sorority, whoever's watching this, and you have a specific unique bond in an organization, I just challenge you all to go out and try to do a retreat and get back to one another, because you never know what a person is going through. And we need to grab those individuals and let them know we are here. This is the reason why we got in such a elite organizations. And that could be band, that could be any football or whatever. And hold on to them, especially in times like this. You never know who's going through it. So that was the reason why we created that retreat. And it was so good to see you once again, my friend.
I appreciate that. Well, Sid will put a bullet on that, allow him to drop the mic on that, and we'll go take our last break. We'll come back on the other side and get into some more talk. So thank you, Brother James Wesby. JDub for giving me a
JDub, A5, man. Love to see you guys, man. Y'all continue doing what you're doing. Be blessed.
We will. Appreciate you.
him? Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of
Morehouse College in Tuskegee.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As we had an interview that took you to the present. I want to go a little bit about the past, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the persistent. Give some thoughts in terms of where we will go next week, because I want to get into some dialogue in terms of what that's looking like as we do that a little bit. So last night you had the NBA draft. As we talk about the past, as we're titled by HBCU Sports, we had courageous HBCU basketball players that were honored during the NBA draft, 2025 draft last night. They looked at these players during the 2025 NBA draft: Chuck Cooper, Earl Lloyd, and Nathaniel Clifton. The first black players to be drafted and played in the league were honored for the 75th anniversary of the achievement. The sons of the three players joined NBA Commissioner Adam Silver on stage along with Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer Oscar Robertson and 4-time NBA champion Andre Iguodala to honor their fathers' legacies and contributions to the game of basketball. Chuck Cooper, Earl Lloyd, Nate Sweetwater Clifton, boy, I love that nickname, 3 NBA pioneers. The league for the first black players who 75 years ago made history, unquote, said Silver. Quote, as we continue to welcome the next generation of players into the league tonight, we also celebrate the accomplishments of these legends who came before them, end quote. Commissioner Silver also acknowledged the players' sons, saying, your fathers hold a special place in the creation of the modern NBA. They were courageous, they showed resolve, and they represent a thread that continues today. The power of sports to bring people together. We are honored to recognize the lasting contributions to the black players. As you know, Chuck Cooper was the first black player drafted by the NBA, selected by the Boston Celtics with the 13th overall pick in 1950 draft. Then you have legendary Earl Lloyd, which a lot of HBCU fans certainly know. Earl Lloyd, selected with the 100th overall pick by the Washington Capitals out of West Virginia State, is the first black player to play in the NBA game. Lloyd played with West Virginia State from 1946 to 1950, leading the team to consecutive CIAA championships in 1948 and 1949. Those that had a chance to see Black Magic, the documentary really goes into that. So if you have young people, children, or folks that you're teaching in lecture and classes that hadn't seen that, if you can find a way to fold that into your class, I think it's a beautiful opportunity to share the legacy of African-American black people in this country in general, specifically the tie to HBCUs, I think is magical, which leads us to another one in terms of Nate Sweetwater Clifton, alumnus of Xavier University of Louisiana, entered in the NBA after an Army stint and 5 years playing for the New York Renaissance. Think about that, in the Harlem Globetrotters, respectively. He signed with the New York Knicks, becoming the second black player to sign an NBA contract. In his 8 NBA seasons, he averaged 10 points and 8.2 rebounds. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge that, going a little bit back into the past to make sure that we understand and honor our history. Also want to go persistence a little bit. This is special to me here. She's connected with SWAC over the years, stepped out of that, trained and honed the skills, and came back to Texas Southern University in the SWAC, which is none other than the women's basketball coach, Renette Skeet, who inked a multi-year extension. This started and was approved by the board, that was pushed over by Dr. Kevin Granger. The contract extension with Skeet, Texas Southern University, pushes her through 2028 to 2029. Season listed a salary of $165. I need to make sure I catch up. According to HBCU legend with Coach Skeet, I need to go into the pockets and borrow a little money. As they say around my parts, loan me some money, you'll never be broke. With that being said, quote, "I'm grateful for the faith that President Crawford and my athletic director and the Board of Regents have in me to continue to lead the program and help our young women prosper," end quote. Skeet told the website. Quote, "I'm blessed. It's a blessing, I should say, to see the seeds planted, acknowledged, and encouraged. TSU is a special place. I want to make this university and community proud," end quote. Charles, I know you had a chance to interview, work with Skeet in a lot of ways, and so I'm sure that you were excited to see this take place like myself. Do always acknowledge being in the SID, understands the importance of how you get this information out, and continue to make sure that you recognize coaches on multiple levels. But I wanted to share that a little bit. As we start to bring this to a close, exactly, Chuck Hutton, Renette Skeet deserves an extension, product of the reservation over there at Alcorn State, as we talk about that part of it. As we move forward, there are a couple of things that I'd like us to look at as we push forward and look into next week. That is about the landscape, the business side of this. We won't get into discussing now, but I want this to germinate. A little bit of this talk has been out there. Some of the things are official. Some of these things look like they're coming forward. Some of it is just emerging, and we haven't really had a chance to get out there. But FCS teams can now play the 12 football game. What does it mean for HBCUs? I want to get us to wrap our heads and take a deeper dive and talk a little bit about that over the week. So I'm going to give you a chance to have a little bit of homework assignment and look what that looks like. The NCAA stated, quote, just to get you started on this, quote, "Moving forward, FCS programs will be able to compete in 12 regular season games yearly, with the regular season starting 13 weeks before the FCS championship selection date. The move provides program greater scheduling flexibility, eliminates the first contest date and exceptions," end quote. So I want to get your thoughts on these couple of areas. What does it mean for the SWAC, obviously? What it means for the MEAC? Different paradigms when you think about the scheduling process of these programs. Do you, as a SWAC with multiple teams, do you extend, as some leagues are talking about, moving from 8 to 9? The contract of the SWAC, in some ways, in one part, is up in terms of extension. What does that look like in terms of how the commissioner and the president's chancellors that are looking at that, how does it affect that kind of decision in terms of maybe putting more games out there, expanding the SWAC such that you can take advantage of the TV side of that? What does that look like? Or do you want to keep it like it is because things are moving forward? How does it affect the MEAC in terms of having 5 conference members? Also, in terms of the independent program, 6 conference members, 5 conference games is what I meant to say. Thank you for that, Drew, to make sure we caught that live. What does it mean for what we call the independent programs? Obviously, part of conferences, which plays full slated games. But what does this mean in terms of their opportunity for non-conference games? How does that affect, and should we push that? What does it mean for money games? What does it mean for conference classes? So different ways that we can look at it. Another one that's Interesting when you shift the football to basketball. The NCAA votes to increase basketball schedule to 32-game season beginning in 2026-27. This came out. The move is being done to encourage even more high-profile non-conference games in November, December, January, and February. So what does this mean for the SWAC and the MEAC in terms of what that means? So HBCU non-conference opponents. How do we look at that? How does this affect scheduling from basketball? Do you push and move games back to January? January time frame. Do you even take the opportunity to push into December? Drew is already shaking his head, so we'll get an explanation, maybe to see why he thinks about that next week. And maybe Charles is on the other side. We'll get a chance to dive into that. Again, I want the lab listeners to do a little homework and get their own thoughts. Send it to us so we can make sure that we can break that down. The last one that I want to put out there is a homework assignment for you to consider and really take some time to do some back study to this. A decision on whether or not to expand the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament will be made in the upcoming weeks. Sources have told ESPN. It looks like they're talking about moving to 76. It might just go to 72. For those that do not realize, current format is for 68 teams. What does this mean for HBCUs in terms of the first round? I know some people like to call it the play-in, but it's the first round game. What does this mean in terms of, shout out to Charles Edmond, that oftentimes on Carlos Brown's show talks about moving off that 16 seed line. We've seen that at Norfolk on the women's side. And this expansion will be both for men's and women's. So what does it mean in terms of the seeding? In a lot of ways, to me, this shifts down the number of 16 seeds that go in there. Mm-hmm. It becomes harder to move up that seed line even more now. We'll get a deeper dive to make sure folks think about that. So those are some of the things I wanted to put on the table. We won't discuss them now because we've given you a full show. But as I said, this is the lab. These are the professors. So at times we'll give you homework assignments to think about as we move forward and decide to discuss in depth later in our different programs. If not on the Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, we'll do it on the network, Black College Sports Network, whether that's with Sports Rap on Sunday with Brian and AD, or whether it's with Carlos Brown in terms of what they do on Saturdays with the Carlos Brown Show. And certainly that ONG Strike Zone, wonder whether they'll get in the definition of a robbery too. I made my judgment. The grade is in it. I dare you to try to find a way to change it. I'm going to write you up, send you on your way. Anyway, maybe the ONG Strike Zone will decide to opine on some of this as well. But with that being said, I do want to say to the lab listeners, you are appreciated. Thank you for your time and energy of what you bring to the show. Thank you for listening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share your podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. I have confirmed that Mike Washington will be in Birmingham for the SWAC Football Media Day. So while he is been on business, he's carved out time to make sure he will be in house for Birmingham for the SWAC Football Media Day. Maybe that means that he's going to come back to the lab during the fall season. We'll see what that means. It seems like he takes his break. You know, some folks in the business, they get to take sabbaticals. Mike takes his own time with his sabbaticals, and I don't know how he still gets paid with that. I don't know. A contract like that, Charles. We got to figure that one out. We need to go back to the management team, Drew. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Mills Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, 80 Drew, and the rest of the BCSN team out there, Brian Roy, and others that give us a great opportunity of sharing this love about HBCU sports. That's Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock to 7 essentially. As we get ready for the football in the fall, remember, we will come back and bring you a show on Sunday morning as well. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's DrKenyatta Cavil. That's Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you, Dr. Carey, in terms of acknowledgement. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube and Facebook. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Drew?
59 days to MEAC SWAC Challenge kickoff. Lecture.
Dismiss.
Have a night, everybody.
No doubt.